This version is unique because I brought on Jungwoon Kim, a wonderful choreographer here in Philly, to imagine with me what the final battle should be. So the whole final act, Act 5 in the full play, but in our version it's Scene 9, is choreographed. So it's somewhat abstract, but still telling the story.
And welcome back to the podcast, the Broad Street Review podcast. I'm your host, Darnelle Radford, and I'm not in that red box anymore, if you all know. We are in our new studio. It's great. They're still in season 10. Season 10, this is episode 27, which is still blowing my mind. We normally do 22 episodes a season. There is just so much to talk about in our thriving theater community. So I'm going to tell you, like I told you in the last episode, today we're going to talk about Philadelphia Theater Company's new modern adaptation of Caesar. It was adapted by co-artistic director Tyler Dobrowsky. It is directed by Morgan Green, who is our guest today. And you can take a moment now to visit philadelphiatheatercompany.org and buy tickets right now. Tickets plural, because theater is more fun with a +1. So you can do that while you're listening, while you're vacuuming, while you're doing dishes, while you're tuning out in the world. Maybe you're on a bus transporting, but we're having this chat. So today we welcome into the virtual studio Morgan Green. Morgan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Darnelle. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yes, I've been looking forward to talking to you actually for a while now. Sometimes schedules don't line up. Sometimes there's just too many things going on. And I'm so glad to have you here today. But what's interesting is that our listeners may know Morgan Green for their attachment to the Wilma Theater. But today we're talking Morgan Green in the capacity of their attachment to Philadelphia Theater Company. So let's get started and learn more about Morgan Green. So tell us about Morgan.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the real benefits of the shared leadership model at both the Wilma Theater and the Philadelphia Theater Company is that the artists get to work at multiple places and share, the resources of this pretty amazing Philadelphia theater community. And it has just been so much fun getting to work with TB and Tyler over at PTC. As soon as they moved to Philly and, felt like they were spreading the shared leadership model down Broad Street, we've been talking about how to collaborate. Like, could we do a show that starts at the Wilma and then with a marching band, the audience walks down the street to PTC? Like, we had all kinds of crazy ideas and we haven't quite pulled them off yet. But this was such a thrill to get to direct Caesar and work closely, especially with Tyler, and also work with some of the people who I work with a lot at the Wilma. So Mateo, who plays Brutus, is part of the Hot House Company, and Jaime, who was in the Comeuppance and A Summer Day at the Wilma, is playing Mark Antony. So yeah, lots of crossover, lots of connections.
Great. So tell us about Caesar.
So Caesar is a 95-minute adaptation of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. It really is the story of Julius Caesar, just condensed. Tyler did such a great job cutting it down. You get the whole story. You get all the famous, amazing, beautiful pieces of text and language. But it really moves quickly. And in the full play, which is only 2 hours long, it's one of Shakespeare's shortest tragedies, there's just a lot of random dudes involved in the plot. And Tyler cut them out, and I don't really miss them. So that's the basics. I guess this version is unique because I brought on Jungwoon Kim, a wonderful choreographer here in Philly, to imagine with me what the final battle should be. So the whole final act, Act 5 in the full play, but in our version it's Scene 9, is choreographed. So it's somewhat abstract, but still telling the story. And then besides that, I think, it's in modern dress. They're wearing suits. It's kind of like House of Cards meets Succession. meets heated rivalry Caesar.
I definitely clocked House of Cards because it felt epic with the lighting and like this. There's like this haze over the piece because there's like a storm that comes through at one point. First of all, just amazing projections. Like everything came together in such a beautiful way that we were just sitting there for a split second. I was like, this is going on for a bit, but you're like, this is so great. Like I'm actually glad that we get to sort of live in this for a second because it really wasn't that much time.
Mm.
We're just so
The
used to a
storm
quick
is
kind of this is happening.
Yeah, the storm is a 45-second video. It
It
did
feels
went back and
long.
yeah, I hear that. It did have narration that we ended up cutting, so maybe that would have made it feel more swift. But I just got to shout out Chris Ash, who's the video and lighting designer, who worked with Taj Roush to create those images. And it felt really important to invest in the supernatural aspects of the story of Caesar, in time on stage and visuals, because it's such a political play, so rhetorical and so much about relationships and power dynamics. But there's this whole aspect of nature and the supernatural on the outskirts of the play showing up in different ways to warn Caesar to beware. So the storm is one of the things that's like, yeah, nature or the gods, the heavens are communicating to Caesar. And I really wanted to stay connected to that kind of elemental aspect of the story, of Shakespeare's version of the story. And they're freaked out by the storm. They're really frightened. It's strange. There's fire raining from the sky. And in Tyler's adaptation, he points out, these climate change events that have been happening to us over the past handful of years that feel supernatural and terrifying. And, like in August 2020, I think is when the skies in California were that really strange shade of red.
Yeah.
It felt like a science fiction movie. So our storm moves through like a crazy flood into fires, into this like really hazy amber that remains through the whole next scene.
Yeah, there's something about the height of this set that makes it feel elegant, but there's also a simplicity to it as well. It's like it's a staircase, you know, and in sort of a ground level with a not a water feature, but like the sculpture and the bowl, and
Mm-hmm.
and all of that is so full in that space too. But like just the moving of that curtain, the way that curtain comes in was like, wow, you don't need much,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
everything is set. And the thing is, like, we're not supposed to be completely blown away by the set the whole time. Like, the set is complementary to the story that's being told. And so you're just in that space going, wow, like, I really love how they close this in so that we're just focused in this moment. And so many transitions happen in that same space without the set really doing much in the way of like transition.
Yeah, I'm so glad that stuck out to you. Yeah, I really can't stand scenic transitions. Like waiting for the set to change drives me crazy. And I worked with Kristen Robinson and Kate Campbell, the co-designers, to figure out a set that could kind of hold all the different spaces that were required. And I love the set so much. And it's epic and simple at the same time. It's based off of the Boston City Hall. That staircase is like, if you look at a photo of the Boston City Hall, it's like this brutalist architecture. But then we have some, Greek elements that soften it with like the curtain and the urn and on the plinth. But it's what I like about it is that it can serve as an interior space and an exterior space. And it can also serve as a public space and a private space. It's like connecting two spaces to each other so people can just be passing through or they can settle. And I feel like that downstage space kind of feels like it's the interior of a steam room in that first scene. And then it's the exterior of of Brutus's courtyard later. Yeah. So it's doing a lot of work for us. It's transforming with us. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about this cast.
Yeah. Let's do it.
um, I one other thing I really like about the production and just how PTC sort of introduced us to this and brought it all together are the videos. The videos on the website, you all did nice little interviews, just kind of talking about things. And it was interesting to learn that, of course, many of the artists have done a lot of Shakespeare, but like this, even though they're very familiar, like this is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, talk about the cast and how they all came together.
This cast is truly incredible, and I feel so lucky that they all were able to do this show. They are very different. They're very unique individuals. And I sort of named at the top of the process that some people have very rigorous approaches for how to do Shakespeare, and that it felt important to me that we hear every word and they know deeply what they're saying, but that we are able to connect to the conversational quality of it on a personal level. So we had to talk extensively during table work about how to connect the story and the characters to our own lives. I also asked everyone to kind of like weigh in terms of their experience with performing Shakespeare and their preferences. The script itself is cut so much that the verse is chopped up quite a lot. So we weren't too concerned with being really faithful to the iambic pentameter, or, we were kind of embracing a more jagged approach to it. And I think especially Jay Hernandez, who plays Cassius, is a real Shakespeare expert. He does so much Shakespeare, and his contributions and his excellence with the text was really helpful. And everybody brought their own perspective on the text to the table, and it was kind of like that saying, like the tide rises all ships. Like we all found our version of our approach together. And of course, I was leading it as the director, but it was very much built on each of their individual experiences with performing Shakespeare and their familiarity with both the play and the history that inspired the play.
So you got Matteo Scammell as Brutus, and talk about Brutus in this moment.
Yeah. Matteo is such a joyful, hilarious, physical performer. So the challenge that we found together was like how to discover this stoic, this guy who's like really concerned with honor and honesty as his pillars, as his values. And then once Matteo kind of located that, found that, I mean, there was this one day in rehearsal where he put on those glasses and it was like, there's Brutus. There he is. He really transformed. He really found this guy. And then it was kind of about bringing back some of Matteo's natural likability and charisma on top of this pretty serious dude. That was like a really interesting journey and balancing act, I think, between those two extremes. But Brutus is a very complex character, and he kills someone he loves because he thinks it's for the greater good. He thinks he's doing something to protect Rome and to protect his beliefs and his ideals. And, by the end of the play, it sort of reveals to you that didn't protect anything. It just led to more violence and more destruction and just continued that cycle.
Yeah.
So he's a flawed character. Yeah.
And it's, the way Matteo portrays Brutus in this like character, the costuming and all of that, he does look very like, we're on your side.
Yeah.
Everybody could trust him if they only hear his side.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting because, in the aftermath of that, the address that Brutus makes is laying a foundation very similar to, what we hear from our own administration.
Mm.
This like I'm setting a tone of I'm innocent, by the way, and what's being said after this is being said with permission. There's this
it. No, that's exactly what we were kind of going for. It's like he's just brutally murdered Caesar and is basically confident that his mere assurance to the people that he did it for good reasons will, protect his innocence, protect his nobility and his honor. And so that it's all fake news. It's all performance. It's all, just like the narrative. Like who owns the narrative and how confident are they when they deliver it? So that we're like, well, he seems pretty sure about that, so must be true.
Exactly. And I think people who do that play on that sort of naivete. I don't necessarily want to call it ignorance. I think people just they gravitate to certain things that make them feel safe, you know. And they're also looking around. Like I'm sure the crowd is like looking around for responses and hearing murmurs and everything. Like it sounds like we're all, I was thinking earlier today that like I saw like a union. I saw like a city employee that had a union hoodie on, and I was like, if you work for a company or there's a collective of people that you work with who sides with that union, you all side with the union. And it's because the majority of people that you care about or that you spend the most time with feel a certain way about them. And so you go, no, we're a union, like we support the union. And I think a lot of people carry like that. They're just like, I don't know, six people in my orbit feel this way about something. And so it must be resonating, deeper than this.
Yeah, and it is true that mob mentality or, like the greater public opinion makes a difference. It does sway things. And so in that speech that you're talking about, Brutus's performance of confidence about the reasons for killing Caesar convinces people. Everyone is in agreement, like what you're saying. They're infecting each other, right? And then it turns once Brutus leaves and Mark Antony is able to give his famous speech about Caesar's ambition and how Brutus is an honorable man. And he slowly invites the people to his side, but it's a process, but he gets them all, and the public opinion shifts, and that's what leads to the Civil War. And I don't know, I mean, just in the last week, watching public opinion shift about the ICE raids in Minneapolis, putting pressure on Trump and the administration to back off and take a different tact, it worked. I mean, sometimes you're like, does going out in the street and being an activist make a difference? And in this case, all those people organizing in Minneapolis and the rest of the country and the world watching what was happening there, like actually did seem to have made a difference.
Yeah, and that's what all that's so impactful too, because there are times where you just feel like, I don't know if this is working.
Yeah.
And there are people who passionate about it, just don't give up. And they start to realize more people, they're growing. And perhaps this is something we can face and fight against. And so I mean, that right there is speaking to the relevance of this piece right now. Like it's speaking to what's going on right outside, and probably on the right day, if you come see the show, there will be sort of a demonstration that's kind of complementary to what's going on stage.
Yeah, the timing of what's happening in the news and this production is uncanny. Like when Tyler chose to program it, he felt it was a relevant piece for our times, and it was, and then it just became more specifically relevant. But I do think the kind of like cynical message that the play is delivering, and that I think our production emphasizes, is that both sides are a little bit ruled by rhetorical manipulation. Like it's really just like to be able to sway the crowd, to appeal to their emotions, but also their, practical sense or their intellect, logos, pathos, all the things that Shakespeare does.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like Mark Antony is not pure good either. All of the characters are problematic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so symbolic, like the blood on everybody's hands. It's all over the place too. And when it shows up, it just kind of, it's just this lingering visual of guilt with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Cassius, J. Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Cassius in this moment?
So Cassius feels personally affronted by Caesar's rise in power. He doesn't see why Caesar should be so celebrated. He feels they have sort of the same credentials, but for some reason Cassius is not popular. He's not getting the kind of support and attention. So he has a personal, aggrievement, and Brutus has a more theoretical or philosophical stance. And so the argument that you can make is that between, like, if you put Cassius and Brutus together into one man, you would have the perfect politician.
Hmm.
But they have sort of like opposite motive, or not opposite, but they have different motivations. And Cassius is, I would say, he's kind of like the motor of the play, at least at the beginning. It's his idea to do the assassination of Caesar. And from the very first scene, you're watching him lay out the plot, get people on board. He's like working them over one by one. And in our play, he only has to work over Casca and Brutus because we only have 4 actors. But in the full play, he has to work over a few more people than that.
Yeah. And we have Caesar, Jude Sandy. So the piece is called Caesar, but is it Caesar's story?
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I think this happens in Shakespeare plays somewhat frequently. There's the title character is not necessarily the emphasized character in the play. There's so much said about Caesar, both before and after he dies. So in terms of focal point, the subject matter of the play, him and his ambition and his sort of ruthless rise to power and disregard for limitations in the government is really the central theme. But him as a character, you don't get to see him too much. There's not a lot of time we get to spend with him. In our play, it's really condensed. You just see him, hear the soothsayer warning him about the Ides of March at the beginning. And then you see him in confidence with Mark Antony, which is actually kind of made up scene that Tyler used some of Calpurnia's text to create. Calpurnia is Caesar's wife in the full length that we don't have Calpurnia in our version. But we see this sort of intimate scene between Caesar and Mark Antony where Mark Antony is like, do you really think it's a good idea to go to the Capitol tomorrow and take the crown? Caesar, Jude Sandy is such an incredible ray of sunshine human being and energetic force. He brought so much joy into the rehearsal process. And he talked about how Julius Caesar in real life, spent his entire life working towards this position of power, gaining traction. And so he finally gets there. Of course he's going to take that crown. He's not going to step back at that point. He feels he earned it and he deserved it and he is worthy of it. And anybody who doubts him, he's going to fight them. So that was his position. That's where he's coming from, going into the Ides of March assassination scene. And then you see Jude again as Octavius Caesar, who is Caesar's adopted son, who teams up with Mark Antony in the Civil War to defend Caesar's death. They are the loyalists. And I think Jude is so amazing. Like, somehow drops 20 years, like when he goes from Julius Caesar to Octavius Caesar, and it's in his body, it's in his voice. It's pretty incredible. And that was, slowly over the course of the rehearsal process, both Jaime, who I'm sure we'll talk about more, and Jude had to really find the distinctions between the two characters that they're playing. They're both double cast. And I think Jude is doing such a beautiful job distinguishing those two people. But Octavius is like 19 years old and born into nobility and hasn't really had to struggle too much to gain the power that he received. So he's not grizzled in the same way that Caesar is.
Yeah. Yeah. Great performances. I noticed that too. I was like, it's subtle, but it's there. It's like, clearly different costume, but the presence, you're like, oh yeah, I like that. Yeah. Jude has such a presence. Every time Caesar appeared, it was like, yeah, this larger than life figure. It feels there was a confidence in it. And probably that was it. The body language, the transition, the difference between Caesar and Octavius, maybe more confidence as Caesar, probably standing up straight and more like determined as hopeful, that usually comes with youth. I think that does. When your eyes are wide, you do look and seem younger, in that process. Yeah. Yeah. Great performance by Jude, Jaime, Maceda, Mark Antony, and Casca. Let's talk about them.
So Jaime's Mark Antony, I think, is pretty unique. I don't think that this is typically the way this character is portrayed. I love the humility that Jaime has when he begins his big speech and the deep emotional connection that he has to the language, which is just incredible. That text is really beautiful imagery and the way it's built. It's a 10-minute speech that Jaime gives, and it gives me goosebumps like every time. I think his performance is truly amazing. And then, we had fun with Casca. He's like, we kind of thought of him as more like a bro-y type that is elitist and ambitious and kind of arrogant, but like maybe not the smartest guy. Thinks he is. And so, like there was one day in rehearsal, I think, where I was like, I think Casca sort of sticks his gut out. And then that is just like changed what Jaime was doing with that. So like the body shape, again, there's subtle changes, but I think they're really effective. And Mark Antony is more upright and more kind of noble. And I also just really love the intimacy and tenderness in the relationship between Mark Antony and Caesar that Jaime and Jude found for those two characters, so that when Mark Antony is grieving Caesar, it feels like he's really lost a friend. He's lost a close person to him. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much to like connect to for each of the artists and their characters. And like you can just spend so much time in them. But I think they're also full. Like, I was saying in the lobby, like, even though this is truncated, it still feels very full, only with a handful of actors, because there's so much life to each one of them in their performance, their portrayal.
Yeah, good. I'm glad it feels that way. Yeah.
The other, there's so many elements of this. This is like overall production, like territory. The choreography here in those, the sort of like venturing, what I was saying, like they're en route to this space, before the fight. Just the way they were moving across the stage so gracefully, in the dark of night. So we were just seeing like shadows, and we're like, wow, this is like stunning. We're just taking our time getting across the stage and sliding, and like it just felt so smooth and graceful. Like, talk about the choreography.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a few things coming together. It's Jungwon Kim's natural approach to movement, which is so sensitive, I think. It's so sensitive to architecture, to breath, to the shape of other bodies, negative space. He's just got such a wonderful approach, and it shows up in the way he moves through space and the kind of movement that he inspires in other people. So I was so excited to get to work with him on this, because he typically works with improvisation as opposed to like what I call a 5, 6, 7, 8 choreographer, like someone who comes in with stuff to go to music. He's not that. He's not a 5, 6, 7, 8 choreographer. So we had to build it slowly. So even on the very first day of rehearsal, Jungwon was starting to work with the actors for like about an hour every single day, slowly building this vocabulary, physical vocabulary. And that built so much trust and comfort between the cast members that bled into the scene work and bled into everything else that we did. So Jung-Woon's practice, his approach to movement and collaboration and relationships is infusing the entire play and of course, specifically the ending. And then the other really important piece of inspiration for me was Beau Travail, which is a movie directed by Claire Denis, French female director. And it's about the legionnaires, French soldiers training in Northern Africa. And they don't talk that much. It's like, there's very little dialogue, and a lot of the film is just them training in the desert. And it's beautiful. And it's like about her view of these men, the female gaze, if you will, on these men and their sort of performance of masculinity and their performance of strength and agility and rigor. And so some of the ideas are coming straight out of that movie.
I'm taking a note. I'm like, am I gonna
Beau
bookmark
Travail.
that?
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie.
Wow. Yeah, and the fighting choreography, there were these elements of like, we're not just fighting each other, we're fighting everyone.
Mhm.
So there's like these positioning where it's like, and we're fighting the rest of them too. Like, even that there's only a handful of us, it still felt like there was a whole big fight with a ton of people in that moment. Just the way that choreography was like, I'm over here now protecting myself, and I've got to watch my back, and I'm
Yeah.
rolling and moving about. It was just, yeah. And on stairs too, it's like we're just like,
Yeah, on
be
stairs
careful.
too.
I know you
I
all
know,
know what you're
right?
doing, but at the same time, I think it just added to the excitement of it too. That it's slow and like dark and beautiful, but also just so there's so much going on. Those were just great moments. Like,
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the challenge is like, how do you make a battlefield with 4 actors? Like, how do you make it feel like the scale and intensity? And I thought that Jung-Woon had a really amazing impulse to have them moving slowly, at least at first. Because you think about war and you think about drums, like high tempo, high energy. And there's other aspects of war that I think are depicted in this section, like the preparing, or the waiting, or the hiding, or the escaping. That's all there as well as the fighting.
yeah, there's there's so much in this. I know we've talked about a lot, but kind of strategically talking around this so that the experience isn't tarnished when you get into the theater.
Mhm.
I'm just saying you're in for an experience. I was going to ask you, what is your favorite scene, or is there a moment that you get lost in every time it comes up?
I really love the Mark Antony's speech. I know it's such a famous speech. The way Jaime is doing it, it's alive. It's really different every time, and I love it. I also like the ending, which we lovingly referred to as manslug, which if you see
Yes.
the play, you'll know
Yes.
exactly what I'm talking about. But I think for me, this visual of these bodies intertwined, writhing, moving down the stairs is kind of like, okay, the story of the play is that vying for political power leads to death and violence for all. It's indiscernible. It's all these bodies are mixed together, and it's like dust to dust. Like they go back to the earth. They become worms. And so that's a really important ending for me. That's how we're leaving people. That's the message that we're leaving the
Yeah.
audience with. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how they slowly drag into place into that. Oh, now they're all there, and they're all gone. It's
Yeah.
what a ride! What a ride! I mean, I don't always feel this like excited by a piece, but what I noticed in the theater is that everyone was in tune. There were moments where we definitely wanted to applaud, but just let the story continue, and it just the sense in the room. Like, I didn't hear, there were no distractions. Like, you can tell when everybody's in there because you're not hearing like candy wrapping and like murmuring and everything. Like, we're all in tune with that story. I was saying, like, sometimes when you're sitting in a theater, my thought is if I was watching a movie and the movie had a scene that took place in the theater, but it's not about the show on stage, it still has to be a wonderful production.
Mhm.
So I was like, this is the example. Like, if you're going to tell someone in a movie, here's what good theater is. It's this. Like
Cool.
the way it felt in that space, it just felt so good. Like I'm telling you, everybody, you know me, I love Philadelphia theater, but come and see this show.
Thank you
You
so
will
much.
not regret it. You know, as we wrap up, like, what do you hope an audience walks away with from this experience?
Well, I hope they're as psyched as you are about it because that's what we want. I'm so glad to hear you talking about the show that way, and I'm glad it felt that way to you. It felt that way to me too. I was thinking that this play could give people a little bit of space to reflect on everything that's been happening in the news right now. Not pointing towards any specific conclusion, but just take a step back, take a moment to zoom out. That's that's kind of what it's done for me, and there's some really crazy parallels. Like there's some moments that feel so specific to what's happening now, and you're like, but this play was written 400 years ago. It's
Mhm.
just wild.
Yeah.
So I I think the audience is resonating with those moments. Like last night, the line that Casca says about Caesar declining the crown at first, where he says that there are wenches, and had Caesar killed their mother, they would still praise him,
Mhm.
which just, I think, for people pricks their ears and sounds like, I could shoot a man on Fifth Avenue
Yeah.
and not be arrested. And you could feel the audience kind of like make that connection, and people were sort of murmuring in response to it. And isn't that just crazy? Like the way the play connects to right now feels
Yeah.
so wild to me. Yeah.
And it almost feels like, we're pulling from this for references of like how this is a continuation, but it also feels like, not to get too much into our administration, but it feels like it's all performative. Like someone's done this
Mhm.
research and said, you know what,
Mhm.
let's drop some elements of Caesar in here and see what happens.
No, truly, it's
Yeah,
so wild. Totally.
yeah. Well, this this piece won't solve many problems, but it will shine a light on so much of what's going on now in this cinematic and deeply artistic way. The production is Caesar, adapted by Tyler Dobrowsky, co-artistic director of Philadelphia Theater Company, from Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare, directed by Morgan Green. This production is on stage through February 22nd. Did you get your tickets already? We've had a great chat and you had time. If you have not purchased your tickets, go to Philadelphia Theater, that's theater company.org, and get your tickets. Because, like I said, theater is more fun with a plus one. Enjoy and engage in this conversation. Morgan Green, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
to chat with
you.
me. It was truly a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Darnelle. It was total pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah.